Well, good morning, good evening, or good middle of the night, as the case may be. Today, joining us, we have Chalabi. Did I get that right? I should have
it's
cleared
it's
that one
a
up.
Chalabi.
Chalabi. We have
Yeah,
Chalabi from Chandra Station. Very sorry about that.
no
Uh,
worries.
from Chandra Station to talk about a number of things. Akash running validator infrastructure on Cosmos chains, as well as a little bit more about Chandra Station. But before we get into that, I want to just say a quick thank you to our two sponsors today, Sommelier.finance. Please go to app.sommelier.finance for the easiest way to add liquidity to Uniswap V3 today. We're going to be launching mainnet here within the next 2 weeks, and I'm going to have a lot more to tell you about Sommelier Finance, which has kind of been a little stealthy, but if you follow our GitHub, you know what we're up to. So anyway, that's very exciting. And then also, can't get away without saying thank you to the OmniFlix media team and giving their project a little bit of time here. OmniFlix Media Network makes a content creation and moderation system that allows for you to mint NFTs on top of those assets. Very, very cool project. Just launched the largest testnet in Cosmos history and going to mainnet here soon as well. And I'm going to have to start asking Sisla about airdrops with the amount I get asked about airdrops for OmniFlix. So maybe Sisla airdrop. But anyway, with that out of the way, thank you very much. And do you mind just telling us a little bit about Chandra Station and sort of like how you got started in crypto?
Yeah, Chandra's just a team of a couple of friends. We were all homies back in high school. We were all mining like Ethereum and Bitcoin and just dabbling in crypto. And then Proof of Stake came out. We had no idea what it was. Spent a couple of years familiarizing ourselves with the concept, and we ended up just building infrastructure and seeing where it went. We had like the likes of the Akash team supporting us, and we were just trying our hardest to learn everything. And so we built our infrastructure, and here we are. We validate on Sif Chain, we validate on Sentinel Hub, on Akash, and those are our mainnet validators, and also Osmosis. How could I forget? And then we
Oh,
also
cool.
contributed to the OmniFlix Network testnet, and we're currently on the Dig testnet as well. So
Nice. Well, you know what's really funny? I have a couple of homies from high school that I started doing mining with, and that was also kind of how I got into this cryptocurrency infrastructure game. Do you want to tell me a little bit about your mining stuff and sort of like how that went?
yeah, so we first started with just our PCs, just learning about it and learning how to do it, and then we saw an opportunity to just buy a ton of GPUs, and we had set up like an entire room just full of GPUs, and we're mining Bitcoin and Ethereum. And then that was like in our parents' houses back in high school. So we kind of
Yeah.
had to stop that pretty fast, but
Oh,
that's
yeah.
how we got our start. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Did you guys, so how long were you able to run your room-sized mine before your
Like
parents shut you
4 or 5 months before they were like, no, you gotta stop that. And we were like, okay, whatever. I guess when we move out, and then it just stopped being as valuable.
Oh, that's really funny. Yeah, because the
Yeah.
GPU mining, the returns on that went way down. Um, your electrical bill must have been insane.
Yeah, that was another reason why, back in high school, we were thinking like, oh, this is going to affect multiple aspects of, you know, our parents having to pay the bills or whatever. So we weren't thinking about that, but definitely came back to get us.
That's really funny. Did you guys have to did you guys have to get more electrical put in? Because like we were running, Tyler and I, my partner over at Strange Love Ventures, which is my validator company.
Yeah.
We had a whole cab. It was like a rack, but sound insulated. And we were running it. We had a friend's office that had we were getting some free power out of. We were able to run the whole thing there. We had it all filled with GPUs and a couple of Bitcoin miners. So we had to get some extra electrical stuff put in.
Yeah, we had a similar situation, but we didn't bother with the extra electrical stuff, so the lights would dim every now and then. There was definitely some issues going on in there, but we were just trying to, get it done however we could.
That's amazing. I love
Yeah.
that. So you guys did that in high school, and then after a few months, your parents put the kibosh on it. And did you study computer science in college?
No, I originally studied audio programming.
Cool.
So kind of, but it's a bit of a different venture.
Same, but different. Still computers,
Yeah.
still programming, just more
Yeah.
audio. That's an area where I always have trouble with. Every time I have to do sound editing, I'm always like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, my main idea was to design plugins for, different digital audio workstation companies, but then I got more heavily into crypto and decided that was the route I wanted to go.
Cool. So, you guys did that in high school, and then you started working on this proof of stake validation stuff. Since then, what got you into proof of stake validation? This is kind of a weird niche field. Like, I fell down some rabbit hole at some point, but what about you?
Yeah, my partner was already like in Cosmos and familiar with everything. And
Oh,
he wasn't
cool.
as familiar with like the infrastructure side of things, but just with like the economics and the tokens. So he kind of showed me the ropes, and then I went in and focused on infrastructure and running nodes and validator nodes and all that.
Nice. And do you guys run physical infrastructure? Or do you run in the cloud primarily?
Yeah, we have a multitude of like designations for our validator nodes and all of our other infrastructure. There's like backups in the cloud, and then we have hardware at specific data centers around the state. So
Yeah, totally. I mean, doing some private data center owned hardware stuff as well as having some spillover to the cloud is definitely the best architecture out there. Need to talk to you guys about the threshold signer that I'm working on too. You might be interested in that.
I think I caught some of that on Twitter, right?
Maybe, yeah. I've been talking about it a little bit. Basically, what it does is it shards the signing key into an NFM multisig, and then you can put those each in separate nodes, so you don't have a single point of failure at your signing server, and then each of the signing nodes is connected to a Sentry or two, and in that way, like entire regions can go down, and like if you've got it sharded correctly, you're fine.
That's really cool. So that replaces TMKMS then, correct?
Yeah, well, if you're running a physical key, it's not going to replace TKMS.
Okay.
The physical key setup with a single server, very high reliability, especially if you're buying quality hardware. But still vulnerable to individual data center issues.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to run a signer cluster, adding hardware support to the signer cluster, hardware key support to the signer cluster would actually be pretty cool. That is a ton of work, and maybe soon we will see.
Yeah.
No, this is mainly for cloud validator folks. So I'll send you a link, and maybe
that's cool.
So that's kind of how you got into Chandra Station. One of the things that you guys, I've seen you guys kind of kick off is working on funding teams working on Akash, which obviously kind of close to my heart. So tell me kind of how you got started with that and how that program's going.
Yeah, so originally we were hit up by Colin. He's the dev relationship lead over at Akash, and he was like, hey, we have this proposal in mind, and we want to start funding different projects that provide benefit to the Akash network. And we were like, hey, that's a really good idea. Let's help you spin up this proposal. So we spun up that proposal, and then you chimed in, which we really appreciated on Twitter, and so kind of got that conversation going. So we talked about that, and we kind of formulated a different version of the proposal, and we spun off what is called the Community Awards Board, the CAB. We meet once every 2 weeks, and it's a group of people who are developers or part of the Akash economy in some sort of capacity. So our opinion is we'd like to consider valuable, and we but we vote on which projects should get more funding versus which projects don't really deserve as much attention. That's kind of it. We just meet and speak. It's technical, it's fun, and we stream it every 2 weeks, I think.
Oh, cool. So talk to me about some of the projects that not only are we funding now, but like things that you're excited to fund.
Yeah, there's a project called Project Phoenix, which is a website hosted on Akash that shows you all the other apps and websites that are hosted on Akash. And not only that, but the lead, I think he's Anthony Rosa. He's going out and contacting these different groups of people like Althea and deploying their website onto Akash. They're not really he's not really related to the team, but he's just going out and deploying these projects and hitting the teams up like, hey, you can run your front end, your website on Akash, decentralized compute, so that's pretty cool. And then there's also another one.
That's an awesome project.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think like this strategy of sort of starting in the Cosmos ecosystem and branching out for Akash is something that I really worked with them on, and it worked hard to kind of introduce that team to the various folks in the ecosystem. And it's been awesome to see not only Akash embrace Cosmos, and but also Cosmos embrace Akash too, which has been really fun.
Yeah, we'd like to get you on there too. Not trying to call you out, but if you want to be on the cab, we'd love to have you on those calls.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, throw me on the. I'll shoot you my email address offline,
Sure.
and I'll jump on those. What time are they?
I think they're earlier in the morning, 8 a.m. PST. I think it kind of depends. The team just kind of agrees on the cab team just kind of agrees on a time. So if you have a specific time, we'd be flexible.
Mornings, yeah, mornings are. I work primarily with folks in Europe. Like a lot of the protocol team works in Berlin, so like I'm up. But that's like my crossover with Europe time, so depends. But anyway, so like that's kind of what you guys are working on with the Community Awards Board. How much funding did you guys receive? And like it sounded like also in the proposal that you guys were planning on extending it as well. So talk about the progress on the first tranche of this and sort of where you see this project going long term.
Yeah, so there's 4 phases. The initial phase is just a small amount of capital to get you going, to get your deployments going on Akash. What you do is you write a proposal on the forum, on the discourse forum, stating what your goals are, what you need help with, what resources you need from the Akash team or the cab. And then based off that proposal, if we deem that there's some sort of value, which most of them do have a lot of value, there's a lot of cool people, smart people working on this stuff, we give you that initial funding amount. And then after you've kind of built a prototype, a small prototype, we'll give you the next phase, which is a larger amount. I think the second amount is $1,000 US. And then phase 3 is 10,000 and phase 4 is 100,000. And then those next phases are kind of secured for teams that are deploying long-term apps to Akash. There's a few cool projects that could go the way. I think Open Registry definitely being one of them. I know these Akash deployment tools are really cool and deserve the funding as well. I think the main goal is
that is, I think, the most important funding
for sure.
Open Registry is super cool, but the deployment tooling like critical for adoption.
Yeah. Have you used Akash Analytics deploy tool before?
Yeah, I have once. Right when the project, right when it went live on mainnet, I deployed my personal website on it, and I think it's still up. I don't know. Akash.jackzampolin.com. Nope, not up right now. I think that wallet probably ran out of funds. There was only like 5 AKT in there.
Yeah.
And I tried it out to also. I tried the Akash Analytics tool to also deploy my personal website again, just because like that's the easiest Docker container I have. But the flow was excellent, and I use a bunch of cloud services. I've managed 50 to 100 node installations on AWS, GCE, Azure, and I also had like a 25 node DO installation at one point. So like definitely familiar with these things. And the Akash Analytics tool provides this kind of cloud native experience in a way that's actually really, really easy for average users to kind of figure out and deploy stuff. So like I'm extremely happy and excited for that product.
Yeah, the templates feature is really cool because you can just click a button, have your template, maybe change a few of the environment variables, and then you have like a working app ready to go. I'm trying to block the sun with my head here, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, it's cool. The template feature, I think, a lot of these traditional clouds, it's like they've got these products, and it's like you're going to launch. This is like our hosted Elasticsearch or XYZ. The template feature is just like, hey, we're going to show you how to do this. You can get in and futz with any of the individual variables, add stuff, and they make it easy and give you that full experience of deploying that Docker container and all of the control that entails without boxing you into any individual solutions. And I think that that's going to be kind of continue to be a strength of Akash as we move forward and we see adoption kind of continue to grow.
Yeah, totally. I think another thing I'd like to speak about, kind of not related to the CAP, but is our focus on deploying nodes to Akash. So through Cosmos Omnibus, you're able to deploy all sorts of like Sentry nodes or validator nodes and infrastructure to Akash. And I think that's kind of been Chandra Station's main focus as well, is how can we bring more value back, and how can we make running nodes cheaper, because running nodes on cloud services is pretty expensive.
Really expensive.
Running them on Akash is definitely an option to make them cheaper and immutable as well, right? Because nobody can take it down, which is, I feel like, a big threat for the entire ecosystem. So that's been our main focus. We do have a lot of Sentry nodes deployed to Akash. Sorry, you're going to say something?
Well, this is one of the reasons why I was most excited about Akash as well. And I'm excited to jam on this topic for a minute. Sentry nodes. Talk about it. Sorry.
Yeah, we have a bunch of Sentry nodes deployed to Akash. In testnet, we have had the full infrastructure deployed, so validator node, Sentry node. There's a cool way to secure your keys and acquire backups, because you can't really interact with the Docker image. Like, you can't SSH into it. You can if you configure it properly through like an Ubuntu server type deployment, but we deploy our nodes just by creating a Docker image, containerizing the application, and deploying it to Akash. And so there's a cool way to back up your keys. So it's pretty much like a full-fledged infrastructure system at this point. There are a couple things like state sync and pruning that we want to get figured out before we do deploy all of our nodes to Akash, our mainnet nodes to Akash. But yeah, that's definitely been our focus.
I'm glad to see that you guys have picked that up. I have been working on other projects and haven't had enough time to like drive through this. But one of the reasons why I started building this threshold signer was to make scalable deployments on Akash, more production ready, less vulnerable to key extraction from individual data centers, and much more fault tolerant. Because, when you're running on this more ephemeral type of cloud infrastructure, it's a very different sort of uptime profile than you would get on professionally hosted data center machines of your own. So really would love to work with you guys to try to figure out how to include that threshold signer in those deployments.
That'd be awesome.
Also,
that's kind of the only piece that's missing, really, because we can through Cosmos Omnibus, you can encrypt your keys, so you can assign a password to them. So if they are extracted, you have to know the password to gain access to them. But I feel like a signer, I think a Horcrux, right? That's what the repository is called. Yeah, I think a Horcrux on Akash would be. I think a Horcrux on Akash would be like the final step and would just seal the deal and make validator node deployment on there like as secure and the uptime profile as good as deploying it on normal cloud infrastructure. Yeah,
totally. So a few questions here. I think that the password encrypted stuff probably great for the key shards too, which is really nice. So that's fun. But the Sentries, what kind of hardware, what do you like, how many CPUs and memory are you buying? And as far as disk, are you guys having any trouble with filled disks?
So that's the thing about Akash, is you can select like your configuration. So whether it's RAM, CPUs, or storage. Cosmos chains are huge. So storage has kind of been an issue.
To get larger.
So storage has kind of been an issue on ephemeral storage, but I think the way to fix that is with pruning.
State sync.
So setting state sync as well, yeah.
I think that this is actually, there's a few strategies that we're going to have to use to really make this super robust. So state sync is a huge one. That's actually a really complicated feature. The first time it got implemented, it never really worked right. And most recently, there was a specific issue where the state that's stored by IBC wasn't properly being transferred via state sync, and that led to app hash mismatches, i.e. the whole thing doesn't work. So that's gotten fixed, and I think in the 0.4.3 version, we should have a fully functional state sync.
Yeah.
So That's a huge piece of it. I think a big issue there has been that the state sync developers haven't had a direct feedback loop with people running the actual network. So that's one piece. The pruning stuff, if you're running Sentries, you don't need any historical state. So you can like prune everything there. And those are the lightest weight nodes that you can run. But if you want to run a relayer or you want to do kind of any archival data service, you're going to need a node that's not pruned. And those are extremely heavy. I run archive nodes for 6 different networks right now. I think I have 2 instances of each archive node. So I'm running quite a bit of that infrastructure. But that is a slightly harder problem. And I think that as Akash integrates with stuff like SIA and Filecoin and some of these other decentralized storage networks, having a service that's regularly snapshotting the full state of those archive nodes, as well as those Sentry nodes, and storing it on Filecoin or SIA or one of these other decentralized storage networks, so that when you want to bootstrap nodes, you can pull that full state from decentralized storage onto your compute and start the node on top of it to shorten bootstrap time. And I think that some combination of state sync snapshots is going to kind of solve this issue totally. Yeah. But I think it's going to kind of take both. Is my
totally
guess.
Yeah. That's why running Sentries, like it's become relatively easy on Akash thanks to Cosmos Omnibus, and so is deploying a validator node, right? But you're going to run out of storage at some point. So I agree with you. State sync and pruning is definitely like the last step to getting a solid infrastructure deployed to Akash.
For validators. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that's most confusing to folks just coming into Cosmos too is that validators are not just one machine. Mm-hmm. When you jump on these test nets, it's easy to spin up a cloud machine, 2 gigs of RAM, 2 CPUs, 8 gigs of RAM, and you're running a validator, and they're like,
no
that's
Sentries,
super cool.
No key signing. Yeah, you can just deploy your validator.
Yeah.
Good to go.
But in reality, these production validators are, my standard loadout for a network is 3 Sentries, a 3-node signer cluster, and an archive node. Mm-hmm. And that's like 7 nodes. And all of that I think of as the validator for that network. The archive node a little bit less, but definitely the Sentries and the signer cluster. And that's been something that explaining validation and explaining Cosmos to people, it's been something that I run into as a stumbling block over and over again.
Yeah, these are exciting times because I know the team at Notional, we've worked with them on a couple things. They're kind of like blueprinting how to run good infrastructure without Sentry nodes, and their whole argument is like, do you need a Sentry node? And after talking with them, they give a couple good reasons as to why. But yeah, right now the infrastructure for validator nodes is more than just a singular node, and I think that causes a lot of confusion. I'm always in different Discord chats and Telegram chats, like trying to help people out, trying to show them the ropes, whether they're from different networks or this is their first time doing anything blockchain related. It's kind of like, okay, here are the steps to get to where you want to be, and it's like 1,000 different things they have to do. So
yeah, totally. What's their argument for why you shouldn't run Sentry nodes? I'd love to hear this one.
I think it's all based off of like getting DDoSed. I can link you with Gadicki and he could explain it to you and really break it down for you. I don't want to speak for them. I just know
Jacob,
that
that's right.
Yeah, when we speak about it, he's really passionate about not needing them, and his explanation makes sense. But I think right now, running infrastructure the traditional way is probably the best idea.
I mean, I don't think of Sentries as DDoS protection. I think of the biggest threat to validator uptime I've had is disconnection from the P2P network.
Yeah.
And the more nodes you have connected to the P2P network, the more fault tolerance you have.
Yeah.
So I always think like, okay, how many P2P connected nodes for each network do I have that I know I can rely on? And sort of what's my failure rate there? And that's why I try to run at least 3 for each network, so that, in case one goes down, I can always sign using the other one and connect the signer cluster around. Or, I ran single signer for a while too. And, with that, you can just point it at different ones.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I like learning about Cosmos. We're still relatively new. We don't know everything. I find that I learn new things every day. I feel like we have the main infrastructure down, and we can provide secure infrastructure. But like with relays, we weren't really too familiar with relays. And then jumping into relays and learning the cost and learning how to set it up, and being shown 0 millisecond latency relays. That was really interesting to get into with the notional team as well.
Yeah, the relayer stuff I think is really fascinating. Strengths Love Ventures, my validator, has just picked up maintenance on the Golang relayer again. So, we will have another relayer implementation that's maintained by a team. And really looking forward to making some announcements there as we bring that thing back up to full compliance. But I will say the Go relayer still relays packets to this day. We relayed some this morning with it. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of work to do kind of in that relayer section right now. And it's one of the kind of weakest pieces of software in the stack. I think we're seeing failure rates around 10 to 20% on packets between different networks. And that's just, like, quite frankly, unacceptable. Anything below 99% is just not great.
Yeah.
And ideally we're at like 5 nines, but we'll get there. But there's a number of changes that are coming. I think one of them is going to allow for, because right now if you're going to relay like 10 packets, you batch them all up in one transaction and submit it. But the problem is if one of those other packets has already been relayed, like let's say the last packet, somebody relayed that last packet, that whole transaction is going to fail. We put a change to the Cosmos SDK that's not going to be included until a later release, and obviously it's going to take a while to roll out across all of the chains. That makes it so that we're not going to roll back the entire transaction. We'll just roll back each of the messages that was duplicate, and this is going to make relaying a lot more effective and reduce the impact of multiple relayers on an individual channel. But there's also a ton of work to be done with the pieces of software themselves, adding better retries, reducing failure conditions. All of the original relayers that got built, there's 3 of them. There's the Go relayer, there's the TypeScript one, and there's the Hermes relayer. They all follow roughly the same architecture and have very similar configuration. I think that there's a lot of room for optimization there and in the mental model for folks. To help, not only make this stuff easier to operate, but also be able to make money for it. So anyway, I'm excited about that. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. So Chalabi, if you want to help answer some of those, that would be cool.
Yeah.
So the first one here is Pramod Rohit, which, by the way, thank you, Pramod. Again, questions, awesome ones. Hey, Jack and Chalabi, what do you think the future of DAO management will be in the case of grants? Do you envision extending the on-chain governance proposal module for the management of the grant program? That's a great question.
A good question.
I'll let you start with this one.
Yeah. So that got brought up in the CAB meeting as well. We're kind of in between deciding whether we're important enough to be the people who say that a project deserves funding or not. I think the opportunity to deploy a proposal yourself is totally there, and just have the entire chain vote on whether or not you should be granted funding from the community pool. I think the purpose of the CAB is to kind of just steer those deployments that we think or not deployments, those projects that deserve funding in the right direction to acquire the funding. But yeah, I definitely do think that on-chain governance is going to be a big part in these larger grant amounts, right? Because if you want the people working on the project to get started, like for this $100 and $1,000 amounts, those amounts aren't small, but in comparison to $10,000 and $100,000, those amounts are tiny, you know. And to bootstrap getting people developing on Akash and deploying applications, I think it's better that those small amounts are just handed out to people who write a small proposal, show why their idea is valuable, and then they get those amounts. But yeah, for the $10,000 to $100,000 amounts, I think on-chain governance proposals are definitely going to be something that we utilize.
Have you seen the groups module?
The groups module, I don't think I'm familiar, no.
So what the groups module does is it basically takes the Cosmos SDK governance and moves it down so that each individual account can have those same tools of being split, being owned by a large number of keys in a weighted distribution, having fund distribution decided by votes and multi-sigs. So it basically makes it so this top level DAO that is the chain can vote funds to smaller DAOs that can kind of take care of this. So like that's basically what you were describing.
Yeah.
It's already implemented and going to be shipped here really imminently. I think the region network team is going to be the first one to take advantage of that. But of the features kind of upcoming within the Cosmos ecosystem, that's the one I'm personally most excited about. You know, we're launching SomChain. That's going to be a zero inflation kind of deal. And we're going to lean heavily on these DAO features. And we've got a lot of stuff that's going to go through governance. So having these additional tools for governance is going to be really, really important.
Yeah, I'm sure the CAB can't wait for that to be implemented. So
yeah, it'll be great. You know, multi-sigs are kind of a nice stopgap. I've run a couple of these things with multi-sigs, but having more robust tooling on chain for governance and DAO-like functionality, extremely important. Okay, other questions. Crypto Kractos asks, what nodes other than validators and relayers do you see yourself running in the near future? Which is a great question.
That's a great question, yeah. I'm not sure. We're so focused heavily on proof of stake and providing like the best experience we can for our delegators. I think currently that's our main focus. I know running miners, right? We developed the image for running that PKT miner on Akash that came out recently. I'm not sure if you could count miners as infrastructure, but that's definitely something we like working on, CPU miners and deploying them to Akash.
Yeah. You know, Sisla it mentions Akash provider nodes.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea too.
I would really love to do that. I have long wanted to do that. And then OmniFlix media nodes, and I would also say with that Sentinel VPN nodes.
VPN nodes, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that I'm most excited about is for this sort of like infrastructure business that we do as validators to expand into some like adjacent verticals, and we can do some other stuff because like I got 50 machines in the cloud that are all running Tendermint for the most part. And like having some other stuff going on will be fun. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. I think there was something like 44 AKT tokens spent on compute yesterday. So I feel like running a provider node now is definitely you'd be getting your fair share of some Akash tokens for sure.
Well, that is more than was spent in the first 90 days of the network, I think. So that's the type of growth you like to see. Up and to the right, hockey sticks. Let's go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Chalabi. And
thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a blast. We'll have to do it again sometime soon.
Totally.
But do you have anything to say? Do you have anything to plug before we run here?
Join us in the CAB meetings. Follow us on Twitter so you can see those come out. If you have any interest on what we're doing with Akash and on Akash, definitely want people to contribute more to that and just participate. So,
is that at Chandra? Is that at Chandra Station on Twitter?
Yep, at Chandra Station on Twitter.
And I should have asked this earlier. What does Chandra mean?
Chandra means moon.
Moon station. Awesome. Oh yeah.
Moon.
Oh yeah. Nice. Awesome. Well, let's go to the moon. Awesome. Well, Chalabi, thank you very much. And I do need to say thank you again to our sponsors before we roll here. Thanks again to Sommelier Finance. Please go to app.sommelier.finance. Easiest way to add liquidity to use SOP v3. as well as OmniFlix Media Network. Please go to omniflix.network for more information on what they're up to and how to be involved. Thanks a lot for your time, and we'll see you guys next week. I don't know if we have a show scheduled, but we've got a couple exciting potential guests, so just stay tuned on Twitter, and we'll see you guys there.
See ya.